Well, hello guys, welcome back. I woke up today, let me move there we go. I woke up today with the grand plan that I was going to be a normie. I was going to take all the stuff I made for FNAF, and I've told you before, I did not cut myself this paint. I've told you before all the hundreds of hours I've sunk into some of these projects, and then I got up today because, I've been actually playing with the Furby Waves last night, and she is kind of what kicked this off. This Furby, when it decides to go on, will act straight up possessed. It's deciding not to go on today. And I had been kind of shamed out of like having Furbies on the other channel, because the only way this one will actually work is if you tilt it on its back. Somehow, when the previous owner played with it, they so messed it up that turning it on its back is the same as turning most Furbies upside down. That's how it's orientated. And so I had to hold it in my arms, and if you're holding something small in your arms and you start talking nonsense, talk to it. And I got all this hate for it. And just yesterday, strangely, it started working for a while, so I had like a little video on it. No, I didn't get any mean stuff on that, probably because I banned all the people. It's the nasty stuff. But it just, it kind of made me think. I thought, well, if I got rid of all this stuff, if like I put it in a big pile and I had an almighty bonfire, I'd still have like the store-bought good stuff. But if I got rid of like all the other stuff I made, and I got rid of waves, and got rid of all this other stuff, I had this great plan. I got up and, I started watching this doll collecting stuff. And really, doll collectors can't relate to me either, because, I make these things. It's not quite like making a doll. They're never meant to go in glass cases or anything. But, as I was making those, what I really, really wanted to make was a Biddy Bab doll. We're going somewhere with this. And I had Bendy, and I went in, and Bendy, I had him put with all the FNAF characters, and I went in, and he looked like he'd gotten tore apart. One of his clothes was missing, the other was torn off and by his body, and he looked like he got mangled by something. Now, there's no animals in the house. As far as I know, the FNAF characters don't move. So somehow he must have got mangled, I guess from being outside on display or something. And I brought him in with the intention of, well, I'm not going to spend this money on this. I found this perfect doll to make into Biddy Bab. I thought, I'm not going to spend money on it. And so I started making him, and I took him outside. And I'm going to put white paint on him and make my Biddy Bab. I don't have white paint. I don't feel like walking up street, even though it's a beautiful day. I don't feel like walking up street and getting $9 thing of spray paint, because I didn't know if it would stick to this kind of tape. Long story short, he became Nightmare. And still, as I'm watching these doll videos about doll collectors, and there's a couple channels for adults that collect dolls. And there's nothing wrong with it. They're not weirdos or anything, but they make these channels to support one another. And I'm, listening to them, and I'm working on him, and I'm thinking, we need a community for people that just like the old strange stuff. So you can reach out to each other, because I really woke up today, and I'm like, I don't have anyone to share my enthusiasm with, because I did things like I made a button for Springtrap, and that sounds totally unexciting, I know, but I made it on my own, and it took like maybe a half hour. These projects always take a lot longer than you think they do. And I put it on him, and he looks great. And it gives him kind of like more 3D detail. And I made this guy that I'm thrilled with. And again, he took all day. And one person told me, well, I don't think I could do it in a day. I said, I'm sure you could. I said, I had the stuff. It's just to be able to get into it and keep going, and not take time out to do other stuff. But then I thought, I've been doing this for we're going to 2-3 years I've been working on these things. I guess I'm picking up the knack and picking up a little speed. And because I started explaining the process of making him, I'm like, oh, I didn't do anything. I put tape on him and I made a lower jaw and I cut out his teeth and I made his hat and I painted him and I guess I did put a lot of work into it. But yeah, that's what I was doing all day, working on him. And I was kind of in a growly mood at Loki. I was like, Loki, go away. You have nothing to do with this. You don't know what it's like to be one of these people. Because a lot of people will call it cringe. If you do something that they don't approve of, it's instant cringe. And then I was reading articles about cringy stuff we've done. And the author was saying we should embrace those moments that, you think back to something you did or you said and you're like, oh, and you're cringing, you should embrace it. And I was thinking, well, a lot of people think the Furbies are cringy and they think these scarecrows are cringy and they think, well, you're an adult, why are you making all this stuff? And I just, I enjoy making it and I enjoy playing with the Furbies because it's, animatronics. And again, Loki's very much into, I think when I first started the channel, we used to have all his animatronics in here and they would go off at like random times during the day. But strangely, when I put them away, they're kind of in what I call the Furby house. I have a coffee table in there and it has like the altar on top and they're underneath. He usually doesn't play with them in there. And it was just interesting because I'm thinking, he only plays with them when they're in the kitchen. It's like he has amazingly good manners for Loki. You know what I mean? That he doesn't get into them. But then he was getting into, today, he kept getting into Funtime Freddy's. Not Funtime Freddy? No, Toy Freddy. Toy Freddy's hat kept like falling off out in the hallway. I have like a FNAF parade going up the stairs. And the hat just kept getting moved. And I kept going out and moving it. And again, I don't have any animals or children or anyone else to move stuff. And it was just, I think in his own way, Loki was helping me deal with stuff because, even though my father became a halfway decent human being at the end, he would have always been, in my formative years, if I couldn't do something as well as the top person in that field that he knew of, he would throw it in the garbage. Like, when I was 10 or so, maybe younger, I got into photography because my dad did it and I thought it looked cool. And I've always loved cameras because there's something magical to me as a person with low vision of the camera being able to see what I can't. It just seems magical to me. And, long story short, if I was a 10-year-old child with a throwaway Instamatic camera, couldn't do as well as a person in their 40s who, had self-taught himself and could have went professional if he wanted to. If a child couldn't do as well as an adult, he would throw my pictures straight into the garbage because this was when you couldn't put them on the computer. I know it sounds scary. You had film and you got your pictures processed, and if they weren't subjects he cared about or composition he approved of, all went in the garbage. So that kind of came up because I'm looking at like all these scarecrows I made in that, and I'm like, I know I don't have the best artistic ability. The ones that I'm actually proud of are like the jack-o'-lanterns, and those are the ones that like nobody seems thrilled with, but I think artistically they look like the most professional of everything I've done. And then there's like ones like I showed you Nightmare, and you've seen Plush Trap, and I'm pretty sure you've seen Springtrap. And it just, I was really tempted again to say, well, I can't do it as well as some other people I've seen. I might as well throw them all out. And I kind of had a struggle with that today because I'm thinking, well, what am I keeping them for? And, why was I fighting this urge? Like, you get this urge, at least for me, to create that. It's like so bad you can feel it in your fingers. And the worst way today, I wanted to work on Biddy Bab, and I couldn't. I ended up getting Nightmare. And I kept going back to these dolls and looking at these dolls. They're these really cheap dolls from China. And they're going to be about yay big when I get them in. They're going to be really small, but they're going to be actually the perfect size to be the Bitty Babs to my baby. And I ordered 2 of them. And I ordered some paint on Amazon because I can go through paint like a house on fire. And I thought, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting money at this point because you always need to go buy new supplies. I kind of prided myself on making like the first so many of them for nothing. And I told him on the other channel, I said, I like to say make them for nothing, but then if you calculate in all the paint, all the hot glue, all the electrical tape and gaffer's tape and all the other kinds of tape and all the duct tape and, all the indirect expenses, like somebody at one time had to buy all this stuff and, the supplies didn't fall out of nowhere, is a lot more expensive than I like to think about it being. So, it's been a weird day, and I was kind of struggling with that. And then I saw this thing about, somebody pinned like a prayer to Loki. They had like copied it of Gail Crescenova's book. I'm like, I hope she knows. Because, there's been a crackdown lately on Pinterest. People are like, hey, you can't give away my stuff for free, like my art or my writing or something. And that's not cool. I didn't give you permission. So I saw that prayer and it was about, Lokean creativity. And I'm like, shut up, Loki. You never gave me, practical creativity. I make these things. They go out for maybe a month, a year, and they're to the point now where they're falling apart, but I'm still investing the time in, refurbishing them. Like, I'm sure everybody's sick of seeing Baby, but I refurbished Baby. And I refurbished Bendy into Nightmare, and I refurbished Springtrap, because he's always been the one that's fallen apart the most for me. And I did all this stuff. And I'm like, sitting here kind of wondering why. Why did I even bother doing all this stuff? But, it's just how the creative process goes. And I was watching one of the doll makers, and she said about, sometimes, her husband always tells her, don't do the stuff you do for money. He wasn't worried about her doing her, like, doll stuff for money. He said, do it, for the pleasure of doing it. And she makes this intricate, outfits for dolls that sometimes they take her a couple months to make like one piece of clothes. And, she said, well, it's her validation. If she can make this stuff and instead of getting to keep it, which she'd really rather do, it's kind of a vindication for her, or validation rather, if she can then go and sell it and someone says with money, yeah, I believe in you. I like what you made. I want this. So that was interesting too, because instead of like looking for money, what a lot of us on YouTube look for is like viewership and view numbers and validation from others for our art, where sometimes it's just so nichey that there are no other people that do it. There's no one else that I've ever met that does exactly what I do. There was a guy that made puppets, and there have been people that tried to make like the animatronics in real life. But even after the initial splash they made and the million or so views they got, as soon as they stopped being like a DreamWorks and stopped churning out animatronic after animatronic or puppet after puppet, their viewership, their validation died down. They had the validation, for a hot minute, and then it went away. And then, you wonder as an artist, did they keep what they made then? Did they sell it? Did they get mad and take it out on the creation? Because, they weren't getting, attention. Because you don't start out with the idea that this will get me attention or a million likes. This all started when I was working on Springtrap and I did him as a joke. And then it became something serious and I got excited. And here I am 2 years later, defending my purchase of dolls from China and paint to people on YouTube. You know what I mean? And Loki is the one, though, that kind of pushes us to go through that process. I used to do art years ago in a group, and we just did art to share art with each other, you know, like in DeviantArt and that, but this was before DeviantArt. And I was at a art show, you know, like one of those little small art shows small towns put on. I just said in passing, oh, that's so pretty. That reminds me of something, you know, so-and-so did. And I mentioned someone in the group. She says, are you an artist? I said, well, you know, I'm not very talented. I said, but the other people in the group, they have quite a bit of talent. And she says, well, where's your gallery? And I said, oh, we don't have a gallery. We do what we do because we love to do it. And we share it online. And she says, well, if you don't have a gallery, you know, basically, why are you wasting your time? Because you're not a true artist if you have not been in a gallery. Now, remember, and this is not disrespect to all you artists out there, but she was pretty much in Dinky Doo Gallery. This was not in New York City by any stretch of the imagination, but she felt superior as an artist to those of us that were just making stuff and having fun and, like, you know, trading it back, and not even trading it, just like sharing it back and forth on the internet. And I thought, you know, a lot of times as artists, and we're all artists if we're on YouTube, we take our validation from other people. And that was the message Loki wanted me to get through the day that, like, filtered down to my brain, like, just about now, actually. And, it's easy to do. It's easy to be taught that, and we're taught it from grade school or kindergarten, we don't even realize it. We're taught that if we do something, we need other people to validate it. And if other people don't validate it, it wasn't worth doing. And that's a terrible thing to teach children, especially like when they get into the arts. They may not be recognized in their lifetime. There are so many artists now that people, you know, they go, isn't it wonderful they're finally recognized? It wasn't wonderful when they were alive and poor and could have, like, used medication and food and clothes and maybe a place to live. No, it was not, you know, wonderful. But, the thing is to remember, you know, as creative people, since Loki does push the creative process, that, you know, a lot of times we're not going to get validation from outside sources. In fact, people might call it cringe. Like, people call it cringe when I work with the Furbies, but I enjoy working with the Furbies. And people call it cringe when I make the scarecrows and everything. And I'm like, you know what? I enjoy doing it. It's kind of my version of being Dawn Post or, you know, Savini or anyone else. It's what I can create out of absolutely nothing. And again, absolutely nothing is usually like a misnomer. I think I used to tell people that they cost nothing to make so I could validate it, because you're like a little kid trying to hide how much you spent. And it's like, nah, they cost money to make. They do cost money to make, but, you know, when you already have this stuff, you kind of like, you say, oh, I made it for nothing. And you're like, I had to buy the stuff at some point. You know, the magical craft supply fairy never comes and says, oh, you're making something. Here's a big box of awesome stuff. Have fun. No, that never happens. But I just figured I would share that with you guys to remind you, you know, never seek validation about, you know, your art or your work or your religion or who you are from anyone. You know, not from me, certainly, not from YouTube, not from Facebook, not from Twitter, not from even, you know, your family if they're not giving to you. It's hard to have to go inside for the validation because we're kind of taught in society that what we think doesn't matter, it doesn't matter until it gets like 1 million views and 1,000 Facebook likes and all this other stuff. And for a huge portion of us, huge portion of us, that just never happens. And we keep wondering, well, what's wrong with me? You know, why don't people like my stuff? Why don't I get 1 million views? And why don't I get 1 million likes? And why don't 5 million people retweet something I had to say? And it doesn't happen for the vast majority of us. We have that illusion of it happening for other people because we see these people that it does happen for. But a lot of that is PR. A lot of it is who you know. A lot of it is they're already established people in whatever field, and of course they're going to get a lot of retweets. But we won't get usually that validation from outside sources. Loki won't always give us validation either. Sometimes he'll like sit back and cross his arms with me and he'll be like, no, you're either going to validate this on yourself and you're going to realize it's worthwhile that you're doing this, or you're going to throw a fit and destroy everything, and later I'm going to say, what did I tell you? But I'm not. I'm stepping back. I'm letting you do this on your own. He likes step back and let me do it on my own with me. And I don't always like that style of management, but he likes it. So I know I really rambled on, and I know I'm losing viewers because it's not as... When I first started the channel, I think every other word was Loki. And now it's more like, let me explain how I reached the process, and it's like maybe one sentence with Loki in it. But I am trying to, get content out to you to try to get back into the habit of making you guys content. Because when I got up this morning, I was like, I'm done with both channels. I'm burning everything I ever made. I am just done. And a lot of that's, for personal reasons, but nothing got burnt. Nothing will get burnt. If the time would come that I would feel like, okay, I've had these things that are literally falling apart, even I can't rescue them at this point, that would be one thing. But to be willing to destroy stuff because, you didn't get enough validation from other people, then we'd all be destroying everything we own constantly, because there's always going to be someone that has a problem with it. Always going to be someone that is mean. And like I'll close with telling you a tip. I don't care how small you are on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else, you will always have people who, for whatever reason, will follow you because they hate you. I know it's weird, but it's true. They have nothing better to do than to see what you are up to every day because they hate you. And it's weird. So if you ask like a question of your followers, or you ask a question on Facebook and someone gives you like this nasty answer, or whatever media platform you did it on, just be aware of that, and be aware of it in real life too. Just because people act nice doesn't mean that they don't hate your living guts. And they might be, they might know that something means a lot to you, but if they have a chance to destroy it, they will. So it's been a very thoughtful day, and Loki would have us watch out for that. I mean, I think they're called frenemies now, where they'll act nice because their ultimate goal is to get close to you so they can hurt you. So just be careful. Every follower you have does not have your best interest in heart. Same thing goes for real life. And don't seek outside validation for the stuff you do in your life. It's one of the hardest things to learn, because we're always taught from the ground up that we should have others validate us, and everything we do, we're taught as a society, should be made to like make other people like us. In up to a point, things like sharing and being polite and having good manners, that's good. But if everything you do, the job you have, the way you wear your clothes, the way you style your house, the way you keep your garage, everything else, the religion, sexuality, everything else, that can't be anyone else's business but yours. Unless they are paying the taxes and everything else, that's none of their business. Is RuPaul would say, unless they paying your bills, don't pay no mind. So I just figured I would share that with you. I feel like I should say Loki like 80 times at the end of the video so you get your Loki's worth. But it isn't always going to be like straight on Loki content. And I was going to stop making you guys content until I had something. But I kind of feel like he's holding back to see what I'll do without him always showing up and doing something. So if you guys like what you see, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.